Hey guys! Alright, welcome to, was this June? Oh my god, how the year's flown by. This is June's speed painting video, and you guys voted for Steampunk. Now, it was a pretty close vote too. So I ended up racking my brains for what I wanted to do for this one. And I remember there was this idea I had ages ago about a flower seller offering a flower to, someone pretty much, down in the dumps in the gutter, looking pretty miserable. And I've been doing these things, these light bulb flowers, which I thought looked pretty steampunk. So I settled on that for my concept. Now you'll see me do a lot of sketching this time because I decided I was going to sit here and sketch it from scratch. So the last few that I've done, I've come in with a little bit of a rough drawing of what I had in mind. But this one's complicated. I had to get the posing right. And there wasn't a lot in the way of reference poses I could find for this. So you guys can see all of my thinking as I'm trying to work out what's going to work. Main thing I knew is that the girl was going to have a big skirt. So I had grabbed some reference images already, so you'll see me refer back to those a couple of times, mainly just to get some ideas on the building behind me. Or behind the character. And, steampunk wings are going in there because, like, why not? So for a little while here, I thought it'd be cool if the flower seller's legs were sticking out of her dress, because I've seen a couple of steampunk costumes where it's hiked up real high at the front. You'll see in a minute I decide that it's a bit too much. But meanwhile, I'm just sort of trying to clean up my drawing. So I start with a lighter colour just to work out what I want to do, and then I use a darker colour as I start to refine the concept. So I figure I'm going to add another basket in there as well as the bouquet of light bulb flowers, because looking at a few classical flower sellers, that's what they've got. So now you can see me trying to get the foot right and the skirt's looking right. And it's just a little bit clunky. Like, I had to try it to find out. And a lot of art is this. It's trial and error. Giving it a go and then going, you know what, I'm not so attached to this that I can't go back and try something else. I'm not afraid to break my painting to see if I can make it better. So that was me just having a quick look at some of the costumes I had in my reference folder and how the bustle skirts worked. So I liked how they sort of like caught up at the side as well. Still trying to make the leg thing work. It's not that bad, but I just figured compositionally it was a bit busy. I really like that hat though. Good old jaunty side tilt. So yeah, so I've gone back to a full skirt now. So that way I've got something called a hierarchy of detail, where more detail is in the places I want to look, like her hand and her face, so that the skirts aren't competing with that. So I'm just trying to decide on a few costume elements, mock in where the light bulb flowers are going to go. I imagine that the trails of the stems are kind of like electrical wire. Lots of just like little details how I imagine they would be. As I said, you're going to see a lot of rough in this video. All right, so now to the poor depressed soul on the curb. I didn't really have a concept for this one, just that they were in a very dark place. So I'm testing out the pose there. I've decided compositionally, like having a bag would look cool because, it sort of pulls it down to the curb. We've got some bits of paper sticking out from it. It may not look like that, but that's what I had in my mind. Just fill in some of the details of the building behind. I mainly just picked it because I thought the arch framed it nicely, and I've been doing all these perspective exercises, so I wanted to sort of use that a little bit. And I imagine the circle behind our flower cellar is going to be a clock, because, steampunk clock, why not? Okay, so more revised sketching. So I do this a lot with all of my artwork. It's really rough sketch first, clean it up a little bit, and then go back and do some detail sketching. And every time I think I need to get more refined, I'll drop a sort of semi-opaque white layer over the top of my work, and I'll start drawing again, because I've always been a messy sketcher, I think, that way. But then slowly I can start to do this, and you can see who's under that messy sketch. So I reckon she's got a bit of a bionic arm, again, just to drive home the steampunk theme. So I'm sort of making up the mechanism here, imagining that, skin joints and ball joints that are in the human body would just become metal. I love a good trestle bustle skirt. I thought cool little metal loops hanging down. Yeah. So it takes me a long time to get a nice clean drawing. And I think it's good this time around showing you guys this, because there are various ways to reach your concept. Photo bashing like I did for the fairy forest. It's a very quick way to get an idea down. This way takes a lot more time. This is the more hardcore illustration angle. But that's because also there was no way I was going to photo bash this because it was so specific. But yeah, you can really see the character coming out now. I'm really getting into her, and this is making me really happy because I've had this idea in my head for a couple of years since I first started doing light bulb flowers as a theme. So I imagine she's offering this light bulb flower as an offering of connection. So the light bulb flower will light up for that person, and especially when you're depressed, it feels like everything is dark. So the offering of a light is hugely symbolic. Just putting some more light bulb flowers in her basket. Oh, look at that. Oh, I'm so happy with how she looks. It's just the rough sketch. All right, so back to our little, depressed person. Again, going on metaphor, I sort of had it in my head that this was me. So I'm now imagining that this bag that's spilling with paper is going to be sort of an artist's sketch pad, or falling down the drain because nothing's working, everything is terrible, nothing is good enough. And I've been lucky enough to have people come along in my life and offer me a light when I'm struggling to light my own way. So though I thought that leg posture that I originally had was a bit too boring, so I tried out a few things, and I sort of decided this was a little bit more dynamic. And sometimes I can just select part of my sketch, resize it, move it around if the proportions aren't looking right. So yeah, I'm just really trying out a bunch of different things to make the pose better. I fixed the fingers there. That was good. That was a win. So I've rotated some of the sketch to sort of really animate that hunch. And I thought, what if I try a different facial angle, because it's not connecting enough with the flower seller. And yeah, I thought that worked a bit better, because she's sort of turning in now, even though she's sort of hunched in on herself. There's a little bit more communication in the body language towards the flower seller. You guys can't see me wildly gesticulating, but I am. Making a bunch of random marks to think, well, what's the costume going to look like? Maybe some broken boots, maybe some socks. Totally a sort of Victorian era page boy, paper boy sort of look. Add a few pencils in the hand there just to really sell the whole struggling artist idea. And now I'm just sort of resizing the two characters against each other to make sure they're sort of sitting where I want them to. Now the infamous page flip to make sure that it's not all skewed. So I'm using the transform tool to warp my sketch layer so that the proportions are sitting nicely even when I flip it. So I've said before, flipping your page back and forth allows you to make sure things are proportionally correct, because when you change the angle, it's easier to see where things might be a little bit too warped. So I'm currently doing my background lines on a separate layer to my two characters. Oh, yeah, I accidentally pressed a button that changed my screen resolution, so ignore that. Um, so I've currently got a layer with my two characters each and a layer with my background, so I can draw just the background without interfering with the character sketch at all. And the more organized I am like this, the better it is for me in the long run. I try to remember to do that. Sometimes I get carried away in the work and my layers become a grand old mess. But right now, yeah, I've got at least a layer per element. So now I go straight into blocking, which is where I fill in shapes of each of the elements of my picture. So I'm blocking the two characters out so that I can play with some colors. And that way, obviously, we don't have lines coming through the sketch and it's very confusing. So next up is laying in some value, so light and shadow. This is a fun thing for me. Again, a lot of trial and error, seeing what works. Oh gosh, my video is going super fast now. So what I can do is I can clip paintings to a layer. So when I block in a character, I can then clip all the layers above it to be contained by that character's silhouette, if that makes sense. So when I'm painting the shadows in, they won't go past the character's border, which makes it, again, easy to control as long as I'm organized. But it's at this point I go a bit crazy, trying a bunch of different lighting above and below layers. I had to go for a bit of a toilet break there, so we had a bit of a video cut, but I got back into it. I really had no idea what my color scheme or my lighting was going to be when I went in on this, so you can see me testing things out. Especially when I don't know what the colors are going to be, I often change the hue saturation. So by opening up the hue saturation and, wiggling the slider around, I can come up with a few color combinations that I might not have thought of. So, moving it from warm to cool. Essentially, this works best when I've already put in my values, so my highlights and shadows. But yeah, a lot of this is just me messing around trying to see what's going to happen. I know I want sort of a really moody scene because then the light bulb flowers are going to stick out. And common steampunk colors are often the beautiful sepias and like metal tones, but you can get like navy and emerald highlights or like ruby red, but generally you don't want to dominate the scene too much with that. So I'm using a lot of gradients just to cast sort of area light and area color. So I'll do sort of like a radial gradient, which is like a circular gradient laid over the top. Now I'm testing out, I'm just using a light color to paint in some bounce lighting that would come from the light bulb flowers to the nearby building. Again, I'm not the best at doing lighting. I'm still practicing very hard to get better at that. So it's still a lot of me making a mark and going, oh, that looks right, or oh, no, that doesn't. Let's erase that. And that's how I get where I am. And I think not a lot of people realize how much fumbling goes into working out the right combination of elements. So I really like getting some strong highlights on the kid in the gutter, because that's the closest point to the light bulb flower. So I originally thought the flower seller's costume would be red, because I like red. It's also a warm color, especially when the background's so sort of muted and cool. But I decided it was we were moving away from a classic steampunk color palette, so pushed it back to brown, brown and gold with some cream. Now initially I was like, oh yeah, no, I'll do a pale skin character, but I've recently been trying to broaden my mindset a bit into being more inclusive, and I was like, well, why not go for a different skin tone? There's no rule to say I couldn't. So I was testing out how to do a different skin tone. So that's why I made the hat lighter, so it contrasts nicely. And then, yeah, I started putting in some green highlights to really pop that out, which I love. It's like, oh, maybe green skirt. Again, I think I changed the skirt about 5 million times, and I can't make up my mind. And then I really love faces, so I can get a bit obsessed with trying to paint a face nicely. So get a bit of the cool bounce lighting to highlight the side of her face. Now, ironically, I spend a good deal of time noodling away at her face, going, oh, you know, if I can get her face looking really nice, then I can bring the rest of her up with it. I end up ditching the face because I overwork it a little too much. And I think it's good that you guys see that, because sometimes paintings work out exactly how you mean them to, and other times it's a battle and a half to get it to work the way you want. It's like pounding clay. And it can be very frustrating, and often why I don't tend to get paintings done in one sitting. I have to walk away and come back. Now, it's not necessarily bad what I'm doing, but I think I want to do something a little bit more cartoony, and I've kind of gone further down the realism route than I intended. And it just doesn't, it's not working for me. But I keep pushing, see if it's going to be all right. I mean, it probably would have been. A lot of this is just instinct. So yeah, here you can see me flicking back and forth between the old face I had and the one that I painted on, and I'm trying to sort of get a happy medium between the two. Something's a little simpler. And trying to get that sort of separation between the head and the shoulders, just by getting some light coming through. I'm just blocking out the whole skin tone section to see if I can't even it out a little bit, because I ended up getting a little blotchy. So again, I'm using that hue saturation trick to just sort of move it around, put in some more shadows. In a minute, I'm going to realize that that shadow on the side of her face is too heavy when she's got light bulb flowers in her arms. There you go. Put in a highlight. Yeah, so doing another attempt at doing the highlights on the face. Flip it around to make sure that face is still looking okay. So there's something in the expression of the original sketch that I thought worked better than where I ended up. So I ended up going back to the beginning, but still keeping the idea that I'm using a sort of a darker skin tone. Figured if I use green eyes, it's gonna work with the other color pops that I've got set up. Just highlighting features so that they stand out. This is just that bit where I end up noodling away. Got to make sure there's sort of a shadow being cast by the brim of the hat, and then the jawline's going to cast a shadow as well. I realized in my initial drawing the ear was too high, so I fixed that. So that's looking a lot better. I'm a lot happier with that. It's a little bit more simpler in style to where I was going before. So I'm zooming in and out to make sure I'm sort of keeping perspective with, if you get, this is one of the biggest problems with painting digitally, is that you can get right up close to something, but then you lose perspective of the whole painting, which is what I think happened the first time I tried to paint the face, that it fell out of sync with the rest of the painting. So it has to look good from a distance. So that's one of those things that you get a lot better in traditional work, but there's obviously benefits to doing digital. So now I'm going to try and put in a bit more of an impression on these light bulb flowers. It's been a while since I've painted them, and I developed a really good technique for them, and I could not remember for the life of me how I did it. So again, more experimentation. Moving back to the kid on the curb, try and push some highlights into them so that their features can sort of come up to match how I've done the flower cellar. I think at this point I sort of start to jump back and forth a little bit, doing more highlights and shadows. So I'm sort of looking at the overall painting at the moment, realizing that my time's running out, because as you know, I do 3 hours a piece for these. Now, once my time is up, that's by no means means that this picture's finished, but I've achieved what I wanted in regards to like a proof of concept. One that I can pull up later and polish up to a high finish. So now I'm sort of jumping a bit all over the place, testing things out. It's a bit hard to follow what I'm doing now. I'm getting really messy, just trying to find the right mood. So what I'll probably do once this recording is finished is I'll probably drop another opaque layer onto it and redraw the picture again as crisply as possible, and then I'll repeat the same process. I'll block out the characters, I'll block out the background, but now I've got this great color and lighting guide that I've made to rebuild the painting in a higher detail. So I found this seems to be the technique that works the most for me, is rough sketch, block it in, do some light and shadow, do some color, and then rinse repeat until you've got it to the level that you want. So for now, just for the final touches for you guys, I've just done a few more color adjustments on the overall picture, and I'm dropping a paper texture in just to give it some grit, and I'm just moving through the modes just to trial and error and see if anything looks good. I like this kind of like just slightly transparent grittiness that comes through. I don't really want it to do too much, so I sort of erase it back, but it's just giving a little bit of texture to the shadows. So yeah, so unfortunately the final painting's not like, blatantly steampunk, but I think you guys can see where I'm going with it. So yeah, that's been June's speed painting. Keep an eye out for the final one, because you can be sure I'm going to go back and polish this up, and it'll probably take, twice as long again to get it to a point where I'm happy to call it finished. Anyway, thanks for watching.